Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, the show where faith meets focus and potential becomes purpose. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, mental performance coach, speaker, and believer that greatness begins within. Each episode, we'll uncover the biblical principles, mindset strategies, and daily disciplines that help student athletes, parents, and leaders just like you walk boldly in their calling. Let's step onto the path that leads to true greatness, God's way. And welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. It's me again, your humble host, Jeff Forrester. In today's episode, I have a return guest, Mr. Teko Bailey, and I brought him back on because he's just releasing his brand new book, and that's Awakening the Hero Within. I mess up on the title once we get into the episode, but it's Awakening the Hero Within. And we have such a great fluid conversation, and it's powerful when people step into something that they want to do. It may be a little scary. It may be kind of like, why me? Why should I do this? I don't know if Teko felt that way, but it sure doesn't come across because he's very confident in what he wants to do and how he wants his legacy to be carried on, not only with his family, but the families with people that he's able to touch with this book. So without further ado, Mr. Teko Bailey. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. And we have a return guest, and it hasn't been that long, which is really cool. We have Teko Bailey that's on. And if you remember the previous episode, and if you didn't listen to it, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. Teko had talked about his book and about having Hero Within coming out. We knew kind of when it was going to come out. Well, it is out now. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to have Teko back on. So this is going to be a little different episode than what we normally do, because I want to dive into the book, because when you hear the title Hero Within, it can mean a ton of different things. And
I'll just correct you. It's Awakening the Hero Within.
Oh, I didn't see that on the, well, I'm glad you said that.
That's okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Because I looked at the graphic and I saw Hero Within. I didn't see anything else.
That part is a bit bigger than the Awakening, which somebody was a bit back and forth on. Do we make the Awakening larger, or do we make Hero Within the bigger part? So,
well, the good thing, I'm glad you stopped me. And that actually goes in line with some of the questions that I have, is that so many times we have this idea of being a hero and what a hero looks like. But how do we get that thing stirring? How do we take that into action? So before we get into that, because that's a really critical part, I'm sure, of the book, share why you really wanted to write Awakening the Hero Within.
Well, I think for me, thank you, Jeff, for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I think for me, why I wanted to write this book is in my earlier years, in my early 20s, I think it's when I had some really deep questions about manhood and identity and just purpose. Just, why am I here? And even though I grew up with my dad, we didn't have those kind of conversations, we would have fun times. I have some good memories of him. And, there were just deeper moments that I wanted to have. And I guess he wasn't able to show up in that way or provide that for me. And so I was searching for more of that, like, Lord, why am I here? He was able to bless me in many other ways, but I think there were some gaps that I wanted to fill in my life. And part of that was understanding manhood and purpose. And that really took me on a journey of the Lord, just ordering my steps and blessing me with some good mentors and coaches that was able to help me navigate that journey to where I am today. And then also, I realized not every man would have the same experience of having access to some of the mentors and coaches I've had. And so I wanted to write this book as a tool for them, especially when you go through those rough terrains and seasons where you don't fully understand what's happening, but there's this path. And so I wanted to leave a track or a pathway that could help other men to figure some of this out instead of going through everything that I went through.
I was on mute. I was like, I don't hear myself. How old were you when you started having those thoughts and feelings about like, what is manhood? What is my purpose? Like,
Yeah.
how old were you?
So this was, I would say, 20 going into 2021. This was around my first year just entering into university. At the time, I was living in Jamaica. And so, I was eager to understand this. There's different things at play, different circles of friends. And I think it's just one of those forming seasons for me as a man where I'm like, okay, you're in university, there's a lot of things happening, a lot of transitions taking place, mentally, emotionally, academically, and so many other ways in your social circles. And I just really had a desire to understand, like, what is my purpose here? Why am I doing all of this?
Now, was
What
your
real
dad,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I just asked, was your dad present?
Yes, my dad was present. I grew up with both my parents, but he was busy working. He owned his own business, and so he was often, just designing machines or building things. And he did spend time with us. This is not from a place of resentment. It's just I don't think he was even aware of the fact that there were some of these elements in his parenting that was missing. Um, in the book, I mentioned briefly that his dad passed away when he was 15. So looking back, I can only imagine that he may have missed out on some of the parenting guides that he needed as he was getting ready for parenting. And so, I extend a lot of grace to him because he blessed me in many other ways. But as it relates to, things like leadership and purpose and getting ready for marriage, things like that, we didn't have, you know, as it was time for puberty and the sex talks. Not every dad knows how to do this or is prepared to do this. And I think that was my experience. And I think a lot of guys also have had these experiences where you are just expected to figure it out, and with time you will learn and understand everything. Unfortunately, that's not it's not the case for everyone. It's not the best scenario. I think as parents, sometimes life just comes at you very quickly and you don't realize what's missing for your children.
And I'm really glad that you clarified that, because there's so many of us as parents that it's not that we intentionally cause wounds or
Yeah.
intentionally are not present or whatever. I had this conversation with the guest previous to this episode, Greg Love, is that this is the first time we've done it. And so
Yeah.
we're just trying to figure out being a
Exactly.
parent, and we're bringing things over. So I lost my dad. My dad passed away my senior year in high school. So when I was 18, so I don't have that father figure to call upon now that my son's
Yeah.
turning 18. So like you said, is it's important to find books like this, find mentors, people who have had children beyond that, and say, okay, now what do I do? I'm now in a
Yes.
position where I don't know what to do. And similar to your dad, is my dad loved us dearly. He just worked all the time because he was raised in that generation as dads go to work, dads provide, that's my job. The emotional part, I'm a little disconnected because
Yeah.
they didn't have a model of what being authentic and vulnerable really looked like. So that was always viewed as being weakness because they grew up in that John Wayne era where
So
the
true.
cowboy rides off into the sunset by himself and doesn't need anybody, kisses the
So
girl and
true.
says, I'll see you later. And
Yeah.
so I like, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but this is just so
No, go for
relevant,
it.
is that you extended your dad grace, because it's so important that we don't carry those things with us, that we look at their situation and say, okay, I understand where it came from. Now, how do I
Yes.
break that cycle and awaken the hero within? Like, how do I step into that person that I really needed when I was that age and get uncomfortable? Because it's not going to be comfortable.
Absolutely. And I always say to people, because I'm not from a Christian family background, I think it was the consistency and faithfulness and dependability of my dad, which was a very good image and example for who God became for me. And so even though there were gaps in my relationship with him that he didn't necessarily know how to fill, or maybe didn't even realize there were those gaps, um, he did model many other aspects, which was a good precursor to my relationship with the Lord, and blessed me in many ways in that regard.
No, that's great. So, really, the why came from you wanting to pour into others and equip other people to stand into that gap that was there when you were at that age. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you this. One book that really inspired me in that time was Purpose and Power of Man by Dr. Miles Monroe, if you're familiar with him. Uh, I bumped into this book when I was going to a really good family friend's house for dinner. Her name is Marion. And while I was there, I kind of just scrolled across her bookshelf and I saw the book, The Purpose and Power of Men by Dr. Miles Monroe. And I just kind of skimmed through the blurb on the back and then started flipping through some of the pages. And it was the first book I've ever written that kind of gave clarity on purpose and manhood. He was so good at breaking things down and giving a broader perspective beyond just the provider and protector kind of mindset that we have. You know, he showed, he painted a picture of like, how can we be cultivators as men? You know, how do we cultivate our environment or family and steward the things that the Lord has blessed us with? You know, how do we write the vision out that the Lord has for our families? You know, he did talk about being a provider and a protector, but not limiting it to that which most of us as men tend to kind of embrace a little bit more because it's what society talks more about. I love that he expounded beyond that and just really um, painted a wider picture and a roadmap and just expanded in terms of relationship with the Lord and how you grow in that area. And so after reading that book, I'm like, whoa, here is somebody talking about this. Now, how do I build on top of that? And I think that is where I started picking up some of those pieces.
When you first were seeking manhood and what that next step would look like, if you, I don't know if you would remember this, prior to doing all the work that you did, what would you have defined manhood as looking like?
That's a good question. Uh, I don't know. I didn't have a. I guess if I were to define it back then, I would just say everything that my dad was doing because he's the closest model to it, and most of what he modeled, um, I don't know, workaholic might be a strong word, but he worked a lot, you know, and in a good way. Like I think um, his work ethic really sets the standard for many things in life. He was on time, you know. He was consistent, but so much of what he did was just in the provider protector kind of sphere. And as you talk about the emotional aspect, he didn't know how to share some of that. Like I would ask him, you know, questions and stories about his dad and you know just his upbringing, and he could share some of that to an extent, but very limited. And his vocabulary was very, in my experience, very small. And so I couldn't build language from what I saw in those areas. And so I needed more. I knew there was more to life than just going to work every day and coming back home.
Yeah, and I asked that question because I wanted to emphasize to the audience that more things are caught than taught. Like you
Yes.
said, is he never sat you down and said, okay, Tico, here's what being a man's all about, is you just watched this guy that you admired, that you loved, that he's your dad. I mean, that's just what you see. And I know that was very similar for me. I didn't realize we had so much in common. And that's the other important part, is the more you have conversations with people, and as people read
Yes.
your book, they're going to see is like, I have so much in common with Teko. It's all about sharing our stories. And what you see is, at least for me, is I saw what my dad emulated, which was what you just shared, very similar. And then I allowed society and my friends to fill the gaps, which can be very dangerous when you start to allow that to happen, when you don't have someone stand in the gap and be deliberate and intentional about, hey, look, what does that definition of mean? And this just reminds me that I need to have those conversations with my son and then eventually my daughter,
Yeah.
so that I know what they're looking at and I can potentially correct what they think is the answer versus what scripture shares with what the answer is. I had written this down the other day, and I'll share this with you and get your thoughts on this while we're talking about this, is that age doesn't make you an adult, decisions do.
Oh man, that is so true. I I think there are a lot of guys in their 50s and 60s that's just coming to grips with, uh, you know, who they're really supposed to be. I've had conversations with men in their late 60s, retirement age and beyond that. And there are a lot of things that they wish they had changed or done differently in their experience as a father and even in their own growth. Like, as you say, society kind of dictates a lot in terms of what we do. If we don't have strong family support systems or communities who communities of people who help to uh, help us navigate a purposeful direction in life. Otherwise, it's just, you graduate from high school and you do university and you get a good job and you think that that encompasses everything that life's about. I have friends who are doctors and being really successful, and yet they're still feeling so lost and so lacking of purpose. And it it can be mind boggling. Like, wait, you have a successful job and you carry this image, but yet internally you don't feel like what you're doing is purposeful. And I think those aspects can be missing from life at times if you don't have the right people around you to help you in those formative years. And psychologically speaking, the formative years tends to be 0 to 7, but beyond that, in the different stages in teenage years, in your eight, late teens going into early 20s, you have so many questions that a lot of them may be unanswered if you don't have the right people around you.
Yeah, that's so good. So while we're talking about definitions and getting back to the book, is how do you define hero?
Well, I think for me, the hero I'm talking about isn't that stoic kind of person, isn't the man riding in on a horse valiantly, with a sword in the hand and all that kind of stuff. He's not that big, muscular, mighty man, even though that is also part of the picture for those who embody that. But it's more the man who is wrestling with the Lord, for direction, for purpose. He's the kind of man who is um, willing to be vulnerable when there is need for that, instead of hiding or wearing a mask. It's the man who is willing to fight for his marriage and fight for his children so they become who God has created them to be. And so ideally, the hero that's awakening in you really is the image of God, who he has already designed you to be, because we are image bearers of God. And so when you go back to the core of who all of us are as men, it's we are image bearers. And it's awakening that hero, that image that God has already implanted in us as men, to come alive and to be awakened.
That's an amazing definition of hero. And when you were describing that, and I know you talked about physical stature, is there's so many times we confuse the two, of thinking about you have to have this massive physical stature to be a hero, to be that, again, that society has drawn and designed for us to image. But to me, is like you said, is that hero is one that stands up for what's right, what's good, what's just, in the face of adversity. And that could be
Absolutely.
a multitude of different things.
Well, our media proliferates that, right? It's always the lone, the lone wolf or the lone hero who is like, you go in and you slay an army and you do all these things. And don't get me wrong, David did some of that, right? But it's not just limited to that. And even though David did slay Goliath and did many other valiant things, he also showed other sides of him being very vulnerable with the Lord. As you read through the book of Psalms, you can hear him weeping and asking for forgiveness and being very vulnerable and praying and hoping that his son doesn't, do some of the things that he wish he hadn't done, and just showing that other side of being manly. And unfortunately, our society and our movies, which we watch so much of and get subconsciously so much of our ideology from, it doesn't portray the full image of what that should look like.
And a lot of that comes from like what we, Teko and I had just discussed. The other part that I'm curious about is how do you help people break that internal dialogue and beliefs that's constraining them from doing what they need to do?
Well, in my book, I talk about three archetypes. I use the analogy of a compass. Your compass is kind of what helps you to find purpose, right? So all of us have an internal compass, and it's usually spinning for most of us if we are not, we're unsure of where we're heading, and so north isn't quite defined as yet. I think when we settle and we ask the Lord, where am I supposed to be going or what am I supposed to be doing? Then you start slowly positioning in the right direction. The three archetypes I talk about is the drifter, the runner, and the imitator. The drifter tends to be the man who is just everywhere and doing everything. His schedule is busy, it's full. He's always doing something, he's on the move, and things look very I guess you could use the term successful or fulfilling for him, but deep inside he's hollow and he is uncertain, he's unsure. The mask he's wearing, however, doesn't necessarily tell you that, and so you can't just tell from looking outside. And I think a lot of guys are in this place of like, yes, I'm doing a lot, I'm busy, I'm productive, but why? What's the bigger picture here? The runner is the opposite, where he knows exactly where he's supposed to be heading. But like Jonah, that God gave a specific message, and this is Jonah in the Bible, he is deliberately going in the other direction and saying, no, yes, Lord, you might be saying I should do this, but the timing is not right. I'm not ready for this. Wait until I get XYZ done, because it's going to cost you something to walk in obedience, right? And so the runner knows exactly where to go, but he's decided he's going to go in the other direction. We also have the imitator, who tends to get his direction from culture or maybe family, where a map that worked for his grandfather or his father is handed down to him. And while there might be good principles in it, it might not necessarily be the same path for him to walk. And so it is really through a relationship with the Lord that you have to walk out your purpose and the things that he's called you to do. And so the imitator tends to imitate either a map that was handed down, whether it's from family or society or culture, to say, this is who you are, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what is expected of you. And then you do that until you get to a point where you break and you say, you know what, this is not working for me. And I think a lot of us tend to find ourselves in one of the three of those archetypes until we begin to walk that journey with the Lord to say, okay, God, what did you create me for? And what is the path that you would have me take to live this out?
Yeah, and those three. I mean, as you were reading through them, I think I've gone through all of those at
Likewise.
some point. At some point in my
Likewise.
life, the runner resonates the most, in the sense that especially growing up in a Christian household, is I always knew the direction that I should be going, but I
Yeah,
made a conscious decision to go the other way, very Jonah-esque, because for what it was going to cost me. It was going to cost me what other people thought of me. And
yeah,
that's, as I've gotten older, that's my definition of hero, is somebody who knows what's right and continues to do that, whether people are looking or not. I have a good friend, as he talked about, they talk about integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. He's like,
yes.
real integrity is doing the right thing when everybody's looking,
Come
because
on.
that's so difficult, especially as a man and as a young man, because of what society has told us of what manhood looks like. And so that's such a powerful direction. So, once someone's read through, or they've gone through the coaching with you and they've identified their archetype, how do you help them understand that their challenges really reveal and not destroy the hero that's within?
Well, first, I say to every man, you're not broken. You're still being formed. You're still being formed by God, and that's the image I lead off with. So no matter where he's coming from, no matter what archetype he fits, hope is not lost. You're working on character issues. You're working on forming areas in you that clearly you did not know the value of developing. And so I think for every man who understands that, and when he is now aware of this reality, he wants that, right? And so he's willing to put the work in. I think if all of us knew, um, we do the best with what we have or what we know, right? I don't think there's any man out there who is aware and has all the resources and tools and doesn't desire to live a better life. When we have the tools and resources, we want to change, we want to grow. And I think it's just the lacking of that. It's the limitation of those things and the people who can speak to us in a way that we can receive it, because some people, they want to beat you on your head with the information or the knowledge, right? And then it's not easily received, so you kind of back away from it because it's just like, you know what, this person thinks I'm just an idiot, or I don't want to try, or I don't want to grow. And so I start from that premise where you're not broken, you're being formed, your character is being developed because God already created you in his image and likeness, and as an image bearer, uh, that is who you are. It's just going back to the foundations of that.
I really like how you reframe that, and I want the audience, if you need to rewind to hear what Teko had to say, is because it's so important to take the negative thoughts and projections, I guess it would be, that our imagination twists around, and reframe that into a positive way. And that simple reframing from "you're not broken, you're being formed," it just means you're not complete. You're still in process. It doesn't mean that you were perfect and you got smashed on the ground and now you're in a million pieces. Like, no, this is all part of the story and part of the process that will continue to form you, as Teko said, into who God's making you to be.
Absolutely.
So the next part that I talked about earlier, once you corrected me on the name of the book about awakening, and I've talked about this on several different episodes, is the gap between knowing and doing. So how do you help people take action into awakening, and not just saying it's a great idea, but actually putting things into play?
Jeff, I think everything takes baby steps. And if you remember what it took to learn to ride a bicycle, I'll use that analogy to say you're going to fall many times. Uh, we're not looking for perfection here, right? We're looking for growth. And if it's one thing I love about growth, it's celebrating the small steps. I think if you are able to do that, if you look at it from that perspective, baby steps, that 1% increase, James Clear talks about in his book, Atomic Habits, the 1% increase, and just the growth that you can achieve in all of that. it's just celebrating those small wins, celebrating those small steps, and that makes a huge difference. So even when you have access to the resources and the community, it's gonna take time. Your habits are gonna take time to reform and be reshaped. Your mindset has to take time to slowly shift. You're gonna have to rebuild maybe your friendship circles and just other things in your life. So that shift is a slow one, and it needs to be celebrated. The very minute steps has to be celebrated, because we live in a fast-paced world, and a lot of things that we see, they're instant, they're microwave, they are, it's now, 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 which is why even when we go through hardship, it is difficult to see God coming through for us. And I speak about that because I'm still in I haven't arrived, okay? I'm still in some of this, right? So for me, I'm just a guide. I'm walking with you in the journey as somebody who's been there, and in many ways I am still there, working through some of these things myself. So it is baby steps. You are in the trenches, but it is knowing that somebody is walking with you, pulling you up when you're weak and when you're falling. Like riding a bike, you fall many times, but then slowly you learn how to steady the handlebars, and you're like, oh, this is working. I remember when I was teaching my older son to ride his bike, and he had the balance wheel and whatnot, and then we finally decided we're going to take them off. And one day I was running behind him, and I was like just holding the bike. This was after several attempts, by the way. And I was holding the seat of the bike, just running fast with him as he was pedaling. And as he was pedaling, I just gently let go. I was still running with him. He didn't know that I let go of the bike. And then when he found out he was doing it by himself, he was just hilarious. Like, it was just, I will never forget that moment. He was just elated and just, oh my gosh, he was shouting, and it was just a moment to be remembered. But I think just knowing that it's those small steps, and then bit by bit you are slowly growing and transitioning into the man that you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful picture that you paint, because I could see it. I mean, I can see the smile on your face, I can see the smile on his face, and the joy, and the fact that he was so happy. He wanted to celebrate with you. And how many
Yes.
times do we need someone else to celebrate with? And I've talked about it all the time, is if you set goals, you have to also identify with, well, how am I going to celebrate when I reach this goal? How am I going to celebrate? What are going to be the things that I'm able to do to really look forward to when that happens? And it could just be is having the family that I've always wanted. So then you
Yes.
have to draw that out exactly and be very detailed of what that looks like, so you have something to strive for.
I think in addition to that, as you talk about goals, there are specific tools, the mind maps, the goal setting plan and stuff like that. And I think those just kind of accompany. Um, it's part of the support system. It's part of the tools that we help to sharpen and make sure you're on track and following your routine and moving towards what you said you want to do, measuring those goals, and okay, where didn't I go right here, or where do I need to course correct? But I think once the mindset begins to shift, those things come very easily after.
Yeah, and you make a very valid point. Again, to draw the audience's attention to it, is the mindset shift. It's moving that away. Is that resilience is a skill in my eyes,
It
and
is.
and determination and those things. Some people are born with it. Some people develop it over time, that they see that resilience pays off in the end. And so every time you move the floor up, it's not necessarily raise the ceiling. You're moving the floor up, of like, I know I can get this far. I can keep going because I've done it once before. And then you hit that moment where it's like, okay, it's getting hard again, but I did it before. So now I'm further along. So you just keep moving that mile marker forward till you get to the finish line, which for us, it's our eternal reward later. That, I mean, it's not going to come before that.
Huh, absolutely.
So for the listeners, what would you say are 1 to 2 daily small habits that they could take to start this process today?
In the book, at the end of each chapter, I do have a living it out section, which is just some practical steps you can take. And two of those, I would say, is one, it's always good to have a support partner, right? This could just be a brother who is walking with you in the journey, who you can be vulnerable with, somebody who you trust, and they're just checking in with you. I think just having that one person who checks in on you in the specific areas that you're trying to grow makes a world of a difference. And so finding that person and sharing with them whatever it is that you want to share and getting their support in the journey is just super important. Secondly, I think just making space to pray or to journal. This could just be as simple as 5 minutes. There is power in 5 minutes, guys. You don't have to do 30 minutes. You don't even have to do 10 minutes, because when you are super busy and your kids are screaming and this is needed, and you need to unpack the groceries and life is just coming at you 100%, at the end of the day you're super tired and you're exhausted. And if you feel like, man, I don't have 20 minutes or I don't have 30 minutes to do this, you're not going to do it. So using some of the principles from James Clear Atomic Habit, I say make it easy, make it attractable, and just put it in to where you can just do 5 minutes of praying and just taking that moment to yourself, or just writing something out in your journal. I know it's not easy to journal, guys, but if you just have a little pocketbook and it's 5 minutes, and you look back a month or two from now, you'll be surprised what you've gotten done.
Yeah, and even the notes app, if you're not a paper person, I think
Yes.
paper adds a layer of, I think, personal touch versus the phone, because then you're actually having that hand to paper. But
Yes.
it's also, if you're not a paper person and you want to be, like Teko said, something that you can do frequently that doesn't cause disruption right off the bat, pull out the notes app on your phone, set an alarm for prayer, and you can change the memo line that says pray 5 minutes or pray 3 minutes. Start as little as you can. Teko talked about Psalms and having, going through it. It provides plenty of Bible verses. If you don't know how to pray, find a Bible verse that you can write and use that as your prayer. Do you have any Psalms that you typically refer people to?
Psalm 139 is a very good one. It just really affirms how much God cares about us, how he thinks about us a lot, and just, aspects of his creation and how he created us in the journey, and that he is walking with us. So if I were to choose one, it would be that. Psalm 23 is another good one, the Lord being your shepherd. And it's just another affirmation that whatever you're going through, he's never going to leave you or forsake you, even though it might feel like that. Because there are some wilderness seasons where you feel like, God, are you here with me? And I talk about some of that in the book as well. But we have seen time and time again through so many stories in the Bible that God never leaves us and forsake us. So I just want to encourage you with those two Psalms. There's so much more, but those two would be good ones to start with.
Yeah, and I don't know your feelings about this, but if you're new to scripture, or you just don't have everything just where off the top of your head where to look, AI has been great, because you can put in like, hey, here's where I'm at, here's what I'd like, give me a list of Psalms that I can use, and it'll pop them out. And then I encourage you to utilize all the tools that you can.
Absolutely. There's an accompanying workbook that I've recently released that goes along with the book as well. So it's if that's something that people want, it kind of helps them to also do some of what you're saying. Find the scriptures, have it as part of the journey as you're reading the book, to kind of go a little bit deeper and make some notes there.
No, that's wonderful. Well, Teko, I know that you're a busy man, so I want to make sure that I give you space and time to share final words, thoughts around the book, what people can expect, and what you hope that they get out of it.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, the book is just recently released on Amazon, so you'll find that on Amazon. And then my website is tekobailey.com, where you'll find the workbook. But to the man who is listening to this, or even to the women who might be listening to this, because I think women also help us in our journey in many different ways, as well as help us in fathering our children well. I want to encourage you that you have what it takes to succeed at life. And I think because life comes with so many curveballs, don't feel like if you're hit down in this season, or if you are feeling overwhelmed or anxious or just frustrated with the season that you're in, God hasn't forgotten you. Like he is refining something in you. He is sharpening an area in you. So don't waste the seasons of challenges. And I'm speaking from being through it and in many ways still going through it. Don't waste those seasons of challenges. One of the phrases I use is, Lord, give me the grace to embrace. And I have found there has been at least three significant seasons in my life where I felt like the Lord was really breaking me and hitting me hard, or He forgot about me, and I'm like, God, this is not what you said. This is not what you promised. But as I embraced those seasons of challenges, and I made it to the other side, like made it through that season, if you want to call it the fire or whatever terminologies you want to use, it is that like, whoa, I am so grateful that I went through this, because I wouldn't have grown, or I wouldn't have become the person that I am today. So I just want to encourage you, if you're in the thick of it right now and you're feeling like, man, I can't go any further, I really pray for grace for you. There is so much more in you with God's help than you think you can do. And so I just pray that the Lord would awaken that hero in you, because it's in every man, and that's how God created you, to overcome the challenges. It's part of what refines us and prepares us to be the person He's already created you to be.
Teko, thank you. Everything that we talked about today is extremely powerful. It's needed. We need more of this. And thank you for being obedient. That I know that it was not an easy process, and it was one of those that it sounds like at the end you're very grateful that you went through that. And this will be a very powerful legacy that you'll leave behind, not just for your family, but all the other families that this book will touch. So I'll have everything in the show notes of what Teko wants you to know about the book, where to find it, where to buy it. I encourage you to go and not just buy it, but as you've finished, then leave a review. The more reviews that you leave, the more people will find it. And in this world, he may not ask for reviews, but I'm going to ask for him, because it just has to get out there. There's so many books that are there, and Amazon's a very big place that they need to see that people are not just buying it, but they're liking and reviewing it. And it's important. It's important to leave reviews for his podcast, my podcast, that so often in society, we just talk about the bad things and want to leave reviews when things don't go well. But please support Teko in this book.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're doing on your podcast. This is amazing. Have an amazing day. It was great being on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, Teko, hang out just for 1 second. But ladies and gentlemen, it's Teko Bailey and Awakening the Hero Within.